Hi there, good morning, and I hope that you are doing well and fine wherever you are, whether you are within the comforts of your home, whether you are traveling, or whether you are in the library, wherever you are. Welcome to my lecture. Today I'm going to give you a lecture on regionalism and globalization. This will be the last topic prior to our midterm examination. And today we are going to examine two important key questions. How do regionalism and globalization impact the traditional notions of nation state sovereignty? And then we will also we'll answer the questions: what are the implications for the future of international relations? So please listen, and as you listen, please take note of some of the events or terms that you do not understand, and perhaps by due diligence, perhaps you can look into the website, try to look for the meaning of these terms and these words, and also descriptions of this event. And this will help you enrich your understanding. And of course, you will not be able 100% to be able to comprehend everything, but with due diligence, you will be able to expand your knowledge. You'll be able to expand your understanding of these world events. So if you have questions, don't forget to ask your questions, post them in the chat box, because I'm going to answer your questions, whatever it is. So thank you so much. Hello, my dear friends. Good morning. Today I'm going to introduce you to a new lesson and entitled Regionalism and Globalization. And today in this lesson, we will learn the meaning of regionalism, and we will discuss this in the backdrop of globalization and how this trend towards regionalism is impacting um, the theory or the existence of the nation state. So last time in our lesson, we discussed, especially in the political dimensions of globalization, we discussed something about the concept of the nation state as the primary actor in international relations. Although we recognize that aside from the nation state, there are other actors in the international arena or in the community of nations, like, for example, the multinational corporations and other governmental and non-governmental organizations. And yet, we focus our attention on the major role of the nation state in globalization as the main element and the parameters of our discussion. You know, the meaning of nation has evolved. Kaya ngayon nakikita natin yung word na nation tapos may hyphen tapos state. Actually, it is a modern concept. It is a modern political idea, an enduring idea of an identity. Kasi noong unang panahon, when we speak of nation, we traditionally refer to a group of people having the same ethnic background or having the same language or the same religion. And today, in a modern sense, especially when we begin to use the word nation state and the idea of a nation state, we come to realize and we come to use the idea as referring to the loyalty of a person to a particular state. That's why may makikita tayo ngayon ng mga countries na marami silang nationalities, and yet they identify themselves with a particular nationality. So their loyalty is now with the nation state. Like, for example, if you go to China, there are many nationalities in China. You have Cantonese, you have Tibetans, you have the Mandarins, etc. But when you ask them about their nationality, they would not refer themselves as Cantonese or Tibetans, but rather they would identify themselves as Chinese, meaning to say belonging to China. And this is the meaning of the nation state. And this is actually the main element and main reference in trying to study globalization. So because we look at the world as a place wherein there are many actors interacting with each other, and we recognize that the nation state is one of the most important element in this arena of interaction. And in fact, this is the main unit of the thing that we call globalization. And in our previous discussion, we also distinguish the meaning of globality and globalization because for brevity and also for intelligibility in understanding the nature of globalization. Because when we speak of globalization, it has something to do with the process, whereas globality refers to the ideal value of what it is to be truly global. So today, we are being challenged by the growth of regionalism. At makikita natin dito ngayon ang koneksyon ng regionalism sa globalization. And in fact, regionalism is not a deviation of globalization, but rather it is the reaction of nation states towards the process of globalization. So in today's lecture, we seek to answer two important questions, and I hope that by the end of our presentation, we will be able to provide an answer to these two questions. The first question is, how do regionalism and globalization impact the traditional notion of the nation-state sovereignty? And the second question is, what are the implications for the future of international relations? So these questions allow for a comprehensive examination of the interplay between these concepts and encourages an analysis of how regionalism and globalization challenge or complement the traditional idea of the nation-state sovereignty. So in this lecture, we will delve into how regional agreements and global forces affect the nation-state's ability to govern itself independently and make decisions and maintain control over its border and its resources. And additionally, we will explore the potential benefits and drawbacks of this evolving landscape in international relations. And by the way, we will also try to let's understand the meaning of nation state and also sovereignty, because these are very important concepts, very important elements in understanding international relations. Because when we speak of sovereignty, it refers to the total power of the state over its subjects, over its people, and over its territory. You know, in political science, we use a lot of abstract terms. Abstract terms like, for example, nation state, sovereignty. Yan. These are examples of abstract concepts, but it has a very important significance in understanding the interplay of power between different elements in the international relations. And because every nation state exercises sovereignty over its own territory, so therefore it is very important also to understand how this sovereignty will be impacted by regionalism, because when nation states become member of regional organizations, they have to surrender a certain portion of that sovereignty to that entity where they belong. And we will discuss and we will try to find out how this kind of surrender or how this kind of concessions will impact the role of the state. So to give you one example, for example, the Rome Statute. You know, the Philippines acceded to the Rome Statute, and according to the Rome Statute, we can be subject to the authority or jurisdictions of the International Criminal Court. So our leaders, especially the highest leader of the land, can be brought to justice in international court and many other things like that. So since we are a member, we therefore give authority to the ICC to investigate certain cases that has been referred to that court. That's why we see this controversy about the former President Rodrigo Duterte and other officials of the government. And this is an example of how the state sometimes have to give concessions or to surrender some of its sovereignty over an entity when it becomes involved in that kind of organization. And we will see how regionalism will impact the status of nation-state sovereignty, and will it really enhance or diminish the role of the state. Okay. So let's deal now with the question, what is regionalism? So, regionalism refers to the political, economic, and cultural cooperation and integration among countries or states within a specific geographical region. It is a concept that stands in contrast to both the strict nationalism and the full-blown globalization. Full-blown globalization. So I am in the slide. You can see the map of Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia is an example of a region of the world. So there are many regions in the world. So you have in Asia, for example, we have Southeast Asia, we have South Asia, we have the Far East, we have the Central Asia, we have the Middle East, etc. And our country, the Philippines, is a member of the Southeast Asian region. And here in the Southeast Asian region, we have a political, cultural, and economic organization known as the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which group the 10 countries in Southeast Asia. So they are grouped together into an organization, and this kind of organization is an example of a regional organization, and the trend towards grouping together is what we are referring to as regionalism. So as I said, regionalism refers to the political, economic, and cultural cooperation and integration among countries or states within a specific geographical region. So it is a concept that stands in contrast to both the strict nationalism and full-blown globalization. So indeed, today, there is no country in the world that can say that they are totally autonomous or totally independent, that they cannot be affected by events in other countries. So today, because of globalization, our fate, our future, our economic situations or political situation, stability can be affected by events in other countries because of our interdependence. That's why sometimes nation states located in a particular region, sometimes they form into regional organizations in order to be able to collectively address some of the problems that confronts them. Okay. So, to further understand the meaning of regionalism, allow me to present to you the 6 key ideas or concepts related to regionalism. The first one is the geographical focus. So, regionalism is primarily concerned with a particular region, which can be defined in various ways, such as continents, example, the European Union, which is concentrated in Europe. Then subregions within continents, for example, the Association of Southeast Asian Nation or ASEAN, which is considered to be a sub-region because it is part of a larger region, or other groupings based on proximity and shared interests. So the key term in order to understand regionalism is the geographical location and the proximity of these nation states or entities grouping together as a regional bloc. Okay. The second is cooperation. So regionalism involves countries or states in a given region coming together to pursue common goals and address shared challenges. So this cooperation can take various forms, including trade agreements, security alliances, political cooperation, and cultural exchanges. So an example of this is for example, the NATO or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So during the Cold War period, NATO existed as a military alliance among the Western countries. But after the demise of communism in 1990s, the NATO continued to exist because they perceived that their primary threat still is Russia. Okay, so therefore, the NATO alliance remained to be one of example of a regional organization that cooperates in the areas of military defense, and this includes European countries. Okay, so there are many other examples, but we simply don't have the time to be able to explain this to you, but you can look for this information from the World Wide Web or from the library. Okay, the third concept about regionalism is sovereignty sharing. So, in the context of regionalism, nations may choose to cede some degree of their sovereignty in certain areas to achieve common objectives. And this can involve harmonizing policies, creating regional institutions, and sometimes adopting a common currency as seen in the Eurozone. So, an example of this is the EU or the European Union, wherein they created some regional institutions like the European Parliament. They also have the Court of Justice, and also they have a common currency, and they try to harmonize their economic and trade policies. So another another concept is economic integration. One of the most common forms of regionalism is economic integration, which can range from simple preferential trade agreements to full economic unions with a single market and a customs union like the European Union. So dito, pag sinabing economic integration, ibig sabihin, pinag-iisa nila, nagkakaroon sila ng isang policy towards tariffs and trade, or sometimes they agree among themselves to give preferential treatment to each other when it comes to trade. Kasi minsan baga pag nagtitrade ang mga countries, minsan nag-i-impose sila ng mga tariffs, mga trades, mga taxes, di ba, mga dues sa ibang mga countries na would like to export their products to them. Minsan ito ang nagiging bottleneck ng mga investors, mga traders, etc. Pero when it comes to economic integration, yung mga members ng organization na yan, they agree among themselves to give themselves each and every member a preferential treatment. So in other words, making themselves free for each other. And sometimes they also create policies wherein they can harmonize their standards, etc., etc. So dito sa ASEAN, meron tayong tinatawag na ASEAN integration. Actually, this started already in 2015, and we are on that process of integrating economically. Okay. Although this can be ticklish, or this can provide a lot of opportunity for everyone, but it also provide risks on the other hand. Okay. Another is security cooperation. So, regionalism is not limited to economic matters. So, security is also a significant aspect of countries in a region may form alliances or organizations to promote peace, stability, and defense cooperation. Then, we also have the cultural and social integration beyond politics and economics. So, regionalism can also encompass cultural and social ties. So, regional organizations might promote cultural exchange, language harmony, and the sharing of common values. So, regionalism can have a significant implication for international relations as it impacts the traditional concept of nation-state sovereignty. So in some cases, it can challenge the idea of absolute state sovereignty by requiring nations to work together on various matters. However, it can also enhance the power and influence of member states by pooling resources and presenting a united front, especially on the global stage. Okay. So here, I'm showing you a regional map. But this regional map was actually taken from the book of Samuel P. Huntington. So he wrote the book The Clash of Civilization. Actually, it's a very interesting book because according to his thesis, in his idea in the book, is that sabi niya, there will always be clashes of civilization. So it is inevitable that civilization, despite of globalization, civilization will clash among themselves. So magkakaroon ng pagmi-meeting ng eye to eye yung mga civilizations, and they will confront each other. And I know I don't have time to really relate to you the essence of that book of Samuel P. Huntington, but you can access the book from the World Wide Web because it is available free, available in the online This book was written in 1996, so somewhat a little bit prophetic for our time, because today we are seeing a lot of his presumptions of his thesis. We can see some of it. Okay, so like for example here, you can see the colors. For example, the color dark violet is it refers to the Western civilizations. You can see in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, and in some smaller portions in some other countries like our country also in the Philippines. So kasi dito sa Pilipinas, makikita mo na ang Pilipinas is like a microcosm of this clash of civilization, because we don't have single dominant civilization. Actually, there are three types of civilization in the country. You have the Cynic, you have the Western, and you have Islamic. So dito sa atin, kaya yung clash ng civilization dito sa atin, makikita natin in a microcosm. So dito makita mo yung violet, that is Latin America. The brown one is the African. The white one with the slanting line is Islamic. And then you also have the Hindu, the Buddhist, and the Japanese. So this is really a very interesting book and thesis. Ang opposite ng kanyang libro ay si Francis Fukuyama. Si Francis Fukuyama naman nagsulat naman siya ng isang classical book. Ang tawag doon is The End of History. Yan, The End of History. O kaya The Purpose of History, The End of History. So si Francis Fukuyama naman ay baliktad, kasi sapagkat he was on the positive tone. He was more on the liberal tone. Sabi niya na habang umuusad ang panahon, sabi niya, yung Western liberal democracy will become the dominant value, and then eventually all the nations of the earth or the world will accede to this kind of system. So kuminsan baliktad silang dalawa ni Francis Fukuyama at saka ni Samuel P. Huntington. Si Fukuyama more on the positive side, si Samuel P. Huntington more on the somber side. Pero makikita natin ngayon, so we can be the judge to ourselves what is happening in the world today, and who among them provided a more clearer prophetic future for the world. So here are some examples of political organizations. Like for example, you have the European Union. So while primarily an economic and political union, the EU has significant political dimensions. It aims to promote peace, security, and political integration among its member states. Then another example is the African Union, or AU. So the AU focuses on political stability, conflict resolution, and governance in Africa. It seeks to address political and security challenges on the continent. Then third example is you have the Organization of American States, or OAS. So the OAS is an intergovernmental organization for the Americas, focusing on political and social issues including democracy, human rights, and regional security. Then fourth, you have the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Then fifth, you have the Arab League. So the Arab League aims to promote political cooperation and coordination among Arab states, addressing the issues such as regional conflict and political stability. Then another example is the CIS. These are the former member of the Soviet states, and their purpose is to promote political, economic, and cultural cooperation in the post-Soviet space. Then seventh, we have the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So the OIC is a political and economic organization of Islamic states addressing issues such as the common concern to the Muslim world, including political and humanitarian matters. So another is the Pacific Island Forum. This organization addresses political and regional security issues in the Pacific region, and as well as social and economic development. And nine, you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Then 10th, we have the Organization of American States. Actually, we have already mentioned this in number 3. So therefore, these are examples only of political organizations. There are many other types of organization, political organizations, etc., etc. And you can just search them out in the World Wide Web, in the pages of the United Nations and other similar web pages. And there are a lot of information about this. And these organizations vary in their goals. So they have their own goals, they have their own structures and areas of focus. But they all play significant roles in promoting political cooperation and addressing regional political challenges within their respective regions. These political organizations or regional organizations are formed because of a pressing challenge, maybe challenge around economics, around politics, around culture, etc. So depending on the need of the region and also depending on the challenges in the global arena posed to the region. Here I will show you another map. This is the map of the new Cold War. So ibig sabihin ng new Cold War kasi noon from 1948 up to 1990 we see the Cold War. This is the conflict between the Soviet Union or Russia versus the West, the United States and Europe. So at the time they were waging proxy wars among themselves, but they do not confront each other because they are afraid to confront each other because of the large nuclear arsenal that they possess. Because of their arsenal, there is the what you call the assured mutual destruction. So therefore they avoid confronting each other, but instead they confront each other within the context of their satellite states. So after the demise of the Cold War, na-dissolve na yung Soviet Union and communism finally retreated from Russia. But after that, there was a reconfiguring of the world order. And a new Cold War has been ensuing for the past several years. And you see here the Chinese-led bloc, which is consisting of, some other countries like North Korea, Russia, some of the Central Asian countries like Pakistan, Albania, and in Africa you have Tunisia, Morocco, and other countries in the Americas. Then you also have the American-led bloc, and you will notice that our country is also belonging to that bloc. And then you have the unaligned states. These countries are the ones who refuse to align themselves or involve themselves in these alliances. So this is the new Cold War. So here is another map to show to us who are the superpowers, the great powers, the regional powers, the independent power, and the weaker powers. So here we belong to the independent power. And itong mga great powers, these are the third world countries, developing countries, and some developed countries who are emerging as leaders in their own region. Like for example, India, Japan, Brazil, and France, Great Britain, Germany, etc. So you also have the regional power. When we say regional power, these are countries that are influential and powerful in their own region. Like for example, South Africa, Indonesia and Australia, Mexico, then Argentina, etc. Then you also have the weaker power. These are the countries who have no influence at all, or they are dependent somewhere because of some problems with state building and their political and economic status. Okay. To further help us understand the concepts that I have been introducing to you about regionalism and globalization, allow me to provide you with two classic examples. So I will be presenting to you two regional organizations, and I will compare them and I will show you the dynamics of how they operate, and I'll show you also how the nation states are reconfiguring themselves in light of this kind of situation. So I will be presenting to you two regional organizations. In the West, we have the European Union, and in our own very own region in Southeast Asia, I will be using the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, as an example. So I'm showing you here the map of the EU and the ASEAN. So the European Union consists of European countries, and even some of the former Eastern European countries that were allied with the Soviet Union or Russia are now members of the EU. Of course, there are qualifications in order for you to become a member of the EU, because they have certain standards that they follow, and they would like them to be more in a way that they will fit each other. So you have here Ireland, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, Czechia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Norway. Here, Great Britain is no longer a member of the EU. Previously, she was a member, but she decided to move out of the situation about from membership to the EU, because of some problems with currency, and also some policies that they perceive to be detrimental to their economic well-being, because Great Britain is a great economic power, and there's some sort of disparity among them, and it creates problem for them. While some other countries are still applying for EU membership, like for example Turkey is not yet a member, but she is seeking membership. Okay, so here in the ASEAN, of course, the ASEAN, the Southeast Asian region is a small region, and it consists of 11 independent countries. But the ASEAN is made up of 10, because the 11th, the new one, is East Timor. And East Timor is not yet a member of the ASEAN. She is only an observer. She has an observer status with the ASEAN. So there are 10 countries in ASEAN. You have Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So let us take a look at the objectives of the EU and ASEAN. So the EU was formed primarily. The objective of the EU is to promote peace, stability, and prosperity in Europe by fostering economic integration and political cooperation among its members. While the objective of the ASEAN is to promote political stability, economic growth, and regional cooperation among its member states in Southeast Asia. So that's that's their objective. So more or less, their objectives are different, the same, but the European Union goes further by promoting economic integration. So in ASEAN, we are working towards cooperation, but eventually it will lead to integration. And the difference, of course, because the European Union is made up of developed countries, while in ASEAN, we are a mixture of developing countries and countries still with problems as far as development is concerned. So that's how different they are. Okay. Let's compare the purpose. So the EU, the purpose is economic integration, political integration, peace and stability, and human rights and democracy. While for the ASEAN, their purpose is to promote political cooperation. So this is in contrast to the EU, because the EU is more on integration, while ASEAN is more on political cooperation. So there's a difference between political integration and political cooperation, because when we speak of political integration, it involves establishing supra-political organizations, like for example a regional parliament or a court of justice. but that is not the purpose of ASEAN. In ASEAN, we are here to promote dialogue and conflict resolution. That's why you will notice that ASEAN has been sponsoring forum discussions with its partner, because the purpose of that is to find out ways to cooperate politically. Then economic integration, the same also. They have the same purpose. They would like to have a common market, free market, the flow of services. So to make it more easier for all the members to trade with each other, to open their borders, and to reduce the tariff and trade. Okay, the purpose of this is to help improve the economy of the region and to make it more stronger in comparison to other places, especially. So, also regional stability. So, in Europe, the purpose is more on peace and stability, because the European nations have underwent several violent wars, like World War First and World War Two. So therefore, they are more inclined towards peace and stability. Here in our country, in ASEAN, plays a role in maintaining regional stability and security, including addressing territorial disputes and promoting peace, especially lalo na sa region natin. We are bordering the South China Sea, which is in itself a volatile region. And ASEAN is actually pursuing a rules-based approach in the management of the South China Sea in order to avoid flashpoints and in order to avoid armed conflict. And at the same time, we are also dealing with the issue of terrorism. Okay. Then in Europe, they are giving more emphasis on human rights and democracy. In fact, they have institutions that oversees implementation of human rights, institutionalization of human rights and democracy. While in ASEAN, we cannot really speak of human rights and democracy in the way that the European countries are speaking about it, because of cultural differences. So therefore, like for example, in EU, decisions are made based on majority decisions. In ASEAN, it's more on consensus. So when you say consensus, meaning to say all members should agree. Because if one member does not agree, then no decisions can be made if there is one who disagree. And also in ASEAN, we have a policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of its member. Kumbaga sa Tagalog, walang pakialaman. Because may dahilan yan, sapagkat the ASEAN countries are varied. Their membership, their culture, their language, their religion are varied. And even the form of government are different, because some countries are democratic, some countries are dictatorship, some countries are communist. For example, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Laos are communist country. And there are also countries that are totalitarian. Like for example, previously Singapore has only one political party. So these are kind of situations that makes ASEAN odd and at the same time unique. That's why they have to find way in order to unite themselves and to be able to cooperate with each other without upsetting these differences, which could trigger division and conflict. So here is a general comparison between the EU and the ASEAN. So while both the EU and ASEAN aim to foster regional cooperation, the EU has achieved a higher level of political economic integration with a common currency and extensive supranational institutions. And the EU places a strong emphasis on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, while ASEAN focuses more on non-interference in the domestic affair of member states, reflecting their different historical and cultural backgrounds. And ASEAN's primary focus is on economic growth and political stability, while the EU's goal also include preventing conflicts that had plagued Europe in the past. So both organizations are examples of regionalism, but the EU's level of integration and its emphasis on political values make it more advanced and complex entity compared to ASEAN. We have this question: how have the historical backgrounds and cultural diversity of member states influenced the objectives and purposes of the EU and the ASEAN? So sasagutin natin ang ang katanungan na ito sa mga susunod na slides at discussions natin. So how have the historical background and cultural diversity of member states influenced the objectives and purposes of the EU and the ASEAN? First, let's take a look at the European Union. So the post-World War II integration, the EU's foundation can be traced back to the aftermath of World War II, when Europe lay in ruins. So the devastating impact of two world wars motivated European leaders to seek a path to prevent future conflicts. So the Schuman declarations in 1950, which led to the creation of the European Coal and Steel Community, aimed to unify key economic sectors like coal and steel and to make war not only unthinkable but materially impossible. So this marked the beginning of the European economic integration. So actually, the purpose of the EU is to prevent war in the future because of the devastation created by the Second World War. So another historical event that influenced the EU is the Cold War. So the division of Europe into Eastern and Western blocs during the Cold War further fueled the European integration process. So Western European countries, supported by the United States, sought to strengthen ties to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Kasi noong unang panahon, after the Second World War, yung mga Western countries, yung Russia at saka US, magkakakampi sila against Hitler. But once they have defeated Hitler, doon nag-evolve yung rivalry ng Russia or ng Soviet Union, kasi previously Russia was known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics because it was an empire. And kalaban niya ang Western Europe. So yung mga Eastern European countries were allied with the Soviet Union. Ano ito? Itong halimbawa yung East Germany, Bulgaria, Romania, Albania, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia. These were Eastern European countries that were allied with Russia or the Soviet Union at that time. Kaya they were divided into two camps. At doon yung Western European countries, they decided to establish the EU in order to strengthen their positions and to make themselves more secure and stable. Okay. Then also with the fall of the Berlin Wall when in 1989 and when communism was dissolved in 1990, especially in Russia, with the demise of the Soviet Union, nadagdagan yung member ng EU kasi yung mga former Eastern European countries who were allied with Russia, nagkaroon din ng changes sa kanilang government. So na-overthrow din yung communism. So they decided to join the European Union. So biglang lumaki yung membership nila. Then also the challenge of globalization. So as the process of globalization accelerated, the EU evolved to address new challenges and opportunities, especially that there are bigger economies like, for example, Japan and the US. So therefore, sabi ng mga European countries, they will be more effective and successful if they will stay united and deal with these economic giants. Okay. Let's take a look at the ASEAN as an organization. So these are the historical background of ASEAN. First is the colonial legacy, because most of the Southeast Asian countries were former colonies which obtained their independence after the Second World War. And that includes the Philippines because we obtained our independence by virtue of the McDuffie Tidings Law in 1948 or 1949, if I'm not mistaken. And also, other ASEAN countries were also former colonies, like for example, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. They were under the French, and the Dutch also controlled the Indonesia and Papua, and also the Americans, of course, controlled the Philippines and other places here. Like for example, Myanmar was under the British. So therefore, most of them share a colonial legacy. So the history of European colonization in Southeast Asia left a legacy of desperate nation states with distinct languages, cultures, and colonial influences. So after gaining independence, this country faced the challenge of forging regional cooperations while respecting national sovereignty. So kumbaga, maliit lang na lugar ang Southeast Asia, subalit ang mga nation states dito ay magkaiba-iba. Unlike in Europe na more or less similar sila, pero dito sa atin ay magkahiwa-hiwalay sila, particularly sa religion. For example, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia are Buddhist, or yes, and also like Indonesia is and Malaysia are Muslims. Then you have, of course, the Philippines is Catholic, and East Timor is also Catholic, and also the political landscape is also different. Some countries in ASEAN are communist, some countries are socialist, some are dictatorship, some are democracy. That's why we have a policy of non-interference in the affairs of each member state. That's why halimbawa isang example dito yung Myanmar, malaki ang problema ng Myanmar ngayon, especially because of the military dictatorship, the repressiveness, etc. So makikita mo na even in ASEAN meetings, very seldom do member states criticize or bring to light these internal problems of Myanmar. Okay. Second is Cold War dynamics. Southeast Asia has also been the playground of the powers of the Cold War era. Some countries are client states. Halimbawa, ang Pilipinas, before we were a client state of the US. Vietnam also a client state of the Soviet Union, etc., etc. So these superpowers were waging their proxy wars in our country, okay, in our region. Then also conflict resolution. So ASEAN's formation was also influenced by the desire to prevent and manage conflict among its members, particularly in the context of the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation. Because when the British created the Federation of Malaya in 1968, it was vehemently opposed by Indonesia, because Indonesia believed that the formation of the Federation of Malaya will only promote British colonialism. And also the Philippines also joined in this kind of confrontation because of our claim to the Sabah territory. In fact, we went to the International Court of Justice but we were defeated. We lost that case actually. Then we also saw the effects of the Vietnam War, the constant bombing of the US of North Vietnam, etc., etc., to cut the story short. Okay. So ASEAN's principles of non-interference and peaceful conflict resolution reflect these historical concerns. So another is economic development. So economic cooperation has been a key driver of ASEAN's development, with the region recognizing the need to collectively address economic challenges and disparities. So the ASEAN Free Trade Area, or AFTA, and the ASEAN Economic Community are examples of this economic focus. And lastly, of course, the cultural and religious diversity. The historical diversity of Southeast Asian cultures and religions and ethnicities has shaped ASEAN's commitment to promoting regional unity while respecting this diversity. So the organization emphasizes the ASEAN way of consensus-based decision making. So in summary, history, including the aftermath of the Second World War and the Cold War, colonial legacies, and geopolitical factors significantly influenced the development of both the EU and the ASEAN. So this historical context shape their objectives, structures, and approaches to regional integration and cooperation. So the common challenges met by the EU and ASEAN are the following. You have the economic disparities. So both the EU and ASEAN encompasses a wide range of economic development levels among their member states. So this economic disparity can lead to imbalances in the distribution of benefits from regional integration and cooperation, posing a challenge to inclusive growth. So magkaiba-iba yung kanilang mga members ng economic development. And even sa Southeast Asia, na lahat naman tayo developing countries, may mga disparities din. Because like for example, Malaysia and Singapore and Thailand had better economies. Unlike other countries, like for example, our country is lagging behind. Okay. And we have internal problems, especially with peace and security, etc. and things like that. So in Europe also the same. There are countries that are mismanaged, like for example Greece. Greece experienced bankruptcy sometime several years ago, which created a problem for the EU. And that this is the main reason why the British also decided to withdraw from the European Union. Then internal division. So each organization has member state with diverse historical background, cultures, and interests. So managing these differences while pursuing common regional goals can be a complex task, especially when it comes to the decision-making process and setting common policies. So you also have the expansion and enlargement. So expanding the membership of the regional organization is a challenge as it requires accommodating new member states with varying levels of development and different perspectives on regional issues. And balancing the desire for enlargement with the need to maintain cohesion is a common challenge. To continue, there are also security concerns both of EU and ASEAN. So we face security challenges, like for example territorial disputes, ethnic conflicts, threats from non-state actors, etc. Di ba yung mga several months ago yung sa ASEAN naging issue yung Rohingya migrants coming from Myanmar. Okay. So you just try to read something about this if you want to learn further about this. Then you also have external influences. Both organizations are influenced by external actors and powers. So for the EU, this often involves the complex dynamics of relation with major global players like the United States, China, and Russia. So ASEAN is also affected by the interests and actions of external powers, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. Then, you also have globalization and trade. So the impact of globalization on regional economies and trade is a common challenge. So both organizations need to adapt to changing global economic dynamics, trade relationship, and trade protectionism. And 7, we have the environmental issues, environmental concerns such as climate change, deforestation, and resource management affect both regions. So climate change poses a shared challenge as it requires coordinated regional responses. Another challenge is the rule of law and human rights. Both organizations emphasize the importance of the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. However, challenges persist in ensuring that all member states adhere to these principles, and addressing issues of democratic backsliding on human rights violations can be complex. So you have also institutional effectiveness. Ensuring the effectiveness of regional institutions and their decision-making processes is a common challenge. Balancing the need for strong central institutions with respect for national sovereignty can be a delicate task. Then also you have public perception and populism. So in recent years, both the EU and ASEAN have faced challenges related to public perception, trust in institutions, and the rise of populist movements that question the value and direction of regional integration. So let's take a look at the role in security matters for the EU. So we will be comparing now uh, the role of these organizations in security matters, both the EU and ASEAN. So first, let's take a look at the EU. Number one is, of course, conflict prevention. Second, diplomacy. Third, common foreign and security policy. Fourth, security cooperation and successful achievement. Okay, so one of the EU's primary objective is to prevent conflict in Europe by fostering deeper economic and political integration among its members. So the EU was instrumental in promoting peace and reconciliation in the post-World War II Europe. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng problem sa Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine because nga Ukraine was applying for membership in the EU. And Ukraine has a very close relationship with Russia in the past. Both of them were formerly one nation, but actually, and Stalin created the Ukraine as a state. So therefore, now there's a problem because according to Russia, there is the perception that the Russians perceive that the EU, being the enemy of Russia, is now at their doorstep. So it became a complicated issue or problem. Then diplomacy. The EU often engages in diplomatic efforts to address regional and global conflict. It serves as a mediator and diplomatic actor, attempting to resolve disputes through negotiation and diplomacy. Then also the common foreign and security policy. So they develop a common foreign and security policy which aims to coordinate the foreign policy of its member states and contribute to international peace and security. However, achieving consensus among member states can be challenging, leading to variation in effectiveness. Then you also have the security cooperation. So the EU established the Common Security and Defense Policy, which includes civilian and military missions. And these missions have been deployed in conflict zones such as the Balkans and Africa to promote stability and peace. Then we have also the successful achievements of the EU. The EU has been successful in promoting peace within its borders, within the Western Balkans, being a notable example. It has also played a constructive role in global diplomacy, such as the Iran nuclear deal negotiations. However, challenges remain in addressing conflict beyond its immediate neighborhood, like the ongoing crisis in Ukraine and Syria. Looking into the role of security for ASEAN, ASEAN has four concerns like conflict prevention and management, second, diplomacy and mediation, third, peacekeeping, and fourth, successful achievements. So, the ASEAN's primary objective is to maintain regional peace, as we have discussed previously, because of the unique situations in South China Sea and ethnicity-based conflict. Then we also have diplomacy and mediation. ASEAN often engages in diplomacy and mediation to address regional disputes such as the South China Sea dispute, the ASEAN Regional Forum or the ARF, which serves as a platform for dialogue on regional security issues. Okay, another is peacekeeping. While not very active on peacekeeping missions as the EU, ASEAN has contributed troops to international peacekeeping efforts and played a role in conflict resolution in its region. So, here are some of the achievements of the ASEAN. So, ASEAN has been successful in maintaining peace among its member states, preventing interstate conflict. It has played a role in conflict management and peace building in Southeast Asia. And even though some territorial disputes persist, and ASEAN's diplomatic efforts have been instrumental in fostering dialogue and cooperation in the South China Sea. In comparison, the EU's integration has led to a high degree of peace among its member states who were historical rivals. In contrast, ASEAN's role is more focused on preventing conflict between its member states, which have been less prone to interstate wars. Then, EU's diplomatic efforts extend beyond its immediate region, while ASEAN primarily focus on Southeast Asia. So the EU has a more developed security policy and infrastructure, including a military dimension, while ASEAN emphasizes non-interference and consensus-based diplomacy. So, third is both organizations have made significant contributions to peace and security within their respective regions. However, their approaches and effectiveness vary due to differences in regional dynamics and member state cooperation. Overall, the success of regional organization in maintaining peace and security depends on the commitment of member states, the nature of regional conflicts, and the effectiveness of the organization's mechanism and policies. Both the EU and ASEAN have played valuable roles in promoting stability in their respective regions, albeit with distinct approaches and challenges. So we will now compare the EU and ASEAN as far as economic integration is concerned. So first, let's take a look at the EU. So first, let's take a look at the extent of the impact. So enhanced economic growth, intra-regional trade, standardization, creation of jobs. So enhanced economic growth, the EU single market, which allows for the free movement of goods, services, capital, and people, has significantly boosted economic growth among its member states, and it has created a large and integrated market promoting efficiency, innovation, and competitiveness. Then intra-regional trade, the single market has led to increased intra-regional trade with member states benefiting from the easier access to customer base of over 450 million people. It has also attracted foreign investment into the EU. Then we have the standardization. The harmonization of regulations and standards across the EU has simplified trade and reduced non-tariff barriers, contributing to economic growth. And fourth, the creation of jobs. The single market has been credited with creating jobs, particularly in industries that rely on open borders and the free movement of labor. So the challenges are implementation. So despite of the legal framework for the single market, there are still differences in implementation and enforcement of rules among member states, and this can create disparities in market access and competition. Then second is the non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers including differences in national regulations and practices can impede the full realization of the single market potential. Then third, the economic disparities. There are economic disparities among the EU member states, with some countries benefiting more from the single market than others. So this raises the issue of social and economic cohesion. Then fourth, the Brexit. So the UK's exit from the EU has disrupted the single market and trade between the UK and the EU. So the ongoing negotiations and adjustment poses challenge to the single market cohesiveness. Let's take a look at the ASEAN economic integration. So here are the impacts of the economic integration. So there is the increased trade. For example, the AEC has fostered increased intra-regional trade by reducing the tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and it has helped to create a more integrated market within Southeast Asia. Then second, also investment. The ASEAN Economic Cooperation has attracted foreign investment to the region, driven by its growing consumer base and improving business environment. And this is true especially because some manufacturing have been transferring from China to other places in Southeast Asia, and some countries have taken advantage of this. For example, like Vietnam, and Indonesia. Then third is economic growth. Member states have experienced economic growth with some emerging as regional economic powerhouses, like for example Indonesia and Vietnam. Then we have connectivity. So infrastructure development and improved transportation link have facilitated the movement of goods and people within the region. So these are the challenges facing the economic integration of ASEAN. First is implementation gaps. So while there are agreements in place, differences in implementation and enforcement of rules remain among ASEAN member states, limiting the AAC's effectiveness. Second, economic disparities. Disparities in development and economic size among ASEAN member states present challenges in achieving equitable benefits from the AEC. Then third is the non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers persist, and varying regulatory practices make it challenging for businesses to operate seamlessly across the region. And fourth, political sensitivities. ASEAN's principle of non-interference in domestic affairs of member states can sometimes hinder the organization's ability to address regional economic and political issues effectively. In summary, both the EU's single market and ASEAN Economic Community have made positive contributions to economic growth and cooperation within their regions. However, they face challenges related to the implementation of agreement, economic disparities among member states, non-tariff barriers, and political sensitivities. Overcoming these challenges requires continued commitment to integration, regulatory harmonization, and cooperation among member states. So I have listed here some of the future challenges for regionalization. First among this is the continued growth of regionalization. So we will expect that in the future, these organizations will grow, and regionalization will find a prominent place in the interaction among the different states in the world. Then second is economic integration. Yan. So this is now becoming common among, especially among regional powers, regional members. Then security cooperation, because our security concerns now is different from what it used to be. So previously it was more on military concerns, but today this is a combination of many things. Then balancing sovereignty. So we still have the role of the state, how this regionalization impacts the exercise of authority of the, individual states. Then diverse regional models, then also global challenges, which include environment, which include criminality, international crimes, etc. Then also interconnectedness. This has something to do with communication, with internet, mass media, the regulation of mass media, etc. Then we also have democratic values and human rights, which will continue to persist as a universal value for every member states. And then adaptation and flexibility. So the nation states will have to adjust to the demands of regionalization without losing their identity and authority. And then of course, one of the challenges is of course global governance. So when say global governance, meaning to say how will the different nation states in regional organization balance or manage the issues of their communities. We now come to the core questions that we posed at the beginning. So will regionalization impact the idea of a nation state? So here are some of the answers. There are actually 8 of them. One is adaptation and transformation. So the nation states have proven to be highly adaptable over time. So it doesn't mean that because of regionalism, the nation state will lose their identity. In fact, these regional organizations will become a vehicle or mechanism for them to emphasize their authority and their identity, and they will have to adapt and transform into this kind of new regime. Then, of course, second is coexistence. Regionalization and nation state can coexist. So, regional organizations often complement the functions of nation states because, there are certain problems, social, economic, and political nature, that cannot be resolved by the nation states. Because in the future, the nation state is the guarantor of security for its citizens. But today, there are certain problems that cannot be dealt with by the nation state alone, but it has to be done in cooperation with others. Example dyan yung mga climate change, international criminality, yung pag proliferate ng mga drugs, etc. These are problems that cannot be solved by just one country. It needs the cooperation of the others. Then third is, of course, the national identity and culture. So the concept of nation state is deeply intertwined with the national identity, the culture, and history. So these aspects are likely to endure even in the face of increased regionalization and globalization. And then fourth, also we have the economic realities. So economic and trade considerations have driven a significant portion of regionalization efforts. However, nation states continue to have a vital role in shaping economic policies, trade relationship, and regulatory frameworks. So, continue. Another is global challenges. Some global challenges like climate change, cybersecurity, necessitates cooperation and coordination among nation states. In these cases, the nation state remains the primary entity to address global issues and protect national interests. So we also have the issue of national sovereignty. While regionalization may evolve, pooling certain aspects of sovereignty, the ultimate authority of nation states over their territories and population remains a defining feature of the international system. Then, seven, varied regional approaches. So the impact of regionalization on the concept of the nation state varies by region and context. Some regions like the European Union have pursued deeper integration, while others focus more on specific issue areas like security or trade. Then eight, also supranationalism versus intergovernmentalism. So the degree to which nation states cede authority to supranational organizations like the EU or maintain a more intergovernmental approach vary. So this choice influences the extent to which the nation states retain control over the key policy area. So magdidepende ito sa kanilang pagdidesisyon. If they want more closer integration, then they can do it. Okay. We come now to the last slide of our presentation. So in summary, while regionalization and globalization present challenges to the traditional concept of the nation state, they are more likely to reshape and adapt the roles and functions of nation states rather than erase them entirely. So the nation state is a resilient and enduring political entity that continues to play a central role in international relations. So governance and identity, the extent of changes in the future will depend on regional and global dynamics. So political choices and the evolving nature of global challenges. So my dear friends, thank you so much for listening to me. You can enrich your knowledge by researching on the topics that you don't understand, and if you have some questions, you can post them in the chat box, and we will deal with your questions. We'll give you answers, and if we can do it, we can facilitate also to take your time to be diligent to search some of the topics that you don't understand. And I hope that you get something out of our lecture for this morning. So have a nice day, and also with a disclaimer that this is only for educational purposes.